and welcome to this very special conversation. A prolific scholar and author who has delved deep into the historical fabric of India. Congress MP Shashi Tharoor's next is a book on the father of the Constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. His book titled Ambedkar A Life provides insights into the Dalit icon's life and also highlights the disputes the latter had with other political and intellectual giants of his era, including Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. So why another book on B.R. Ambedkar? Let me take that question straight to Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who's joining me live. Dr. Tharoor, really appreciate your time. There are so many books written on Ambedkar already. Why one more?
There wasn't a recent short biography, I thought, that could appeal to the general reader in our country and indeed elsewhere. But this particular volume is one of the shortest biographies you can find, rather as I did with Jawaharlal Nehruji in my 2003 biography, Nehru, the Invention of India. I tried to tell the entire story of the life and distill the legacy in a couple of hundred pages. And I hope, therefore, that it will actually be read. Because we've had some wonderful biographies of both Nehru and Ambedkar, which are rather fat and long and detailed, and only people with a passion for the subject or scholars in the subject would have the time to delve into them. This tells a story that you can read on a flight, or a long flight anyway, or on a train journey, and get the life and legacy of this great Indian.
I'm certainly looking forward to reading that one, Dr. Tharoor. Dr. Tharoor, in Annihilation of Caste, as mentioned in your book, B.R. Ambedkar blamed Hinduism for caste system. And I'm quoting him, in which he said, "You must tell the Hindus that what is wrong with him is his religion, which has produced in them the notion of sacredness of caste." What, in your opinion, is the current situation in India, and are Orthodox Hindus attempting to reclaim their lost glories, and what will be the consequences of multiple temple disputes erupting across India?
That's a lot of questions in one, Mary. First of all, as far as today's India is concerned, I think there's been an evolution since that time. I think certainly overt caste discrimination that was being practiced at the time that that book was written has declined dramatically. And even when you think that that book was written at a time when the temple entry proclamation allowing Dalits into temples in the constituency I represent of Thiruvananthapuram had just happened, whereas today discrimination against Dalits in a temple or anywhere else would be unthinkable in progressive Kerala. So just like that, I think in most parts of the country there's been tremendous progress. But yes, atrocities persist, and I've mentioned some of them, as you know, in the latter parts of the book, where I've given examples of terrible things still happening, which shows that some people, but I think thankfully a small minority, still have not overcome their medievalist mindsets.
Okay, I have two more parts to that question which you have to answer. First, are Orthodox Hindus attempting to reclaim their lost glory? And what will be the consequences of the temple disputes that have erupted in various parts of India?
Well, look, I think orthodoxy in the sense of maintaining untouchability is long gone. There are some people who may privately practice it, but they would never admit to it publicly. To begin with, it's against the law, but also because they would realize that they would shame themselves before their social contemporaries. So I think that orthodoxy in that sense is not going to be trying to reassert itself. Orthodoxy in the sense, however, of sort of traditional social practices, reverence for temples, all of that, I must admit, is on the way back. And while there's nothing wrong in every religion, there will be orthodox elements and liberal elements, myself amongst the latter. Nonetheless, as long as both adhere to a religion, there is room for a certain amount of amicable difference or dispute within that. But then your third question was, I think, taking this forward into the present era of temple disputes.
Yes.
And there I must say that I think there is a very, very serious concern about how unconstructive all of this is. Let's face it, on the Gyan Vapi mosque versus the Kashi Vishwanath temple,
That's right.
there really is no historical dispute. It is well and amply documented that part of the temple was knocked down by Aurangzeb and that a mosque was erected in its place. But that is a fact of history. Are we now, in our anxiety to undo it 300 years later, anxious to create new wounds in our society? That is the real question. And it's not a religious question, it's a policy question. I am not at all disagreeing that there was a temple, and quite conceivably, the mosque has been built on the ruins, on the rubble of a temple that was knocked down, or part of the temple that was knocked down. But all I'm saying is not what the historical facts are. I'm just asking, why are we trying to wage the battles of 300 years ago today? We can't revenge ourselves upon history, because in the process we are hurting our own society today and undermining our prospects of social cohesion and orderly progress forward tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's my objection. And that's not to do with orthodoxy. That's actually reactionary behavior that I'm objecting to.
I'm going to add to my last question. Usually, Sarvanas are divided over Ambedkar's definition and segregation of Varna and caste. What do you think about this distinction?
Well, look, I think this is an academic distinction. I mean, does Varna descend from caste, Jati descend from profession? All of this stuff can go back and forth. Gandhiji and Ambedkar had a quarrel about that. I think, to my mind, that is not at the moment an issue for policymakers and politicians. It can be sorted out, if necessary, between sort of religious pundits and let them argue it. For me, what I'm more concerned about is, what does the law say? The law says discrimination on the basis of caste is illegal. Untouchability is illegal. You simply cannot. Therefore, whatever your justifications, actually permits conduct which makes it impossible for somebody, merely by virtue of their birth in a particular caste, to suffer certain disabilities. Now, in my state of Kerala and in the neighboring state of Tamil Nadu, a Dalit can become a priest in a Hindu temple. He has to pass certain examinations to show his command of scriptural knowledge and his command rituals and the mantras. He can become a priest. There are all castes are represented in the priesthood. And this goes back to the central idea that Gandhi also propagated, that caste, which he initially justified, is not merely a hereditary tool, but it's linked to your practice of certain skills, knowledge, and therefore professional acquisitions. In that idea, your birth in a particular caste makes no difference. And to my mind, that is very healthy. In some ways, we are very progressive in this regard, because in some parts, we're even seeing women becoming priests. Of course, that's very unusual still in the Hindu religion. You have by and large the temples in the sanctum sanctorums usually attended to by male priests. But still, this kind of openness is still possible within the Hindu faith, and I welcome it. So I would say that rather than arguing about the definitions of Varna and Avarna and Savarna, let us now put all that aside and say, what does the law say? The law says, if you're a Dalit but you've qualified in all the respects to be a priest, you can be a priest, and no one can prevent you from being a priest because you're a Dalit. End of story.
Okay, let me quote Ambedkar again. He has said that there is no doubt in my mind that unless you change your social order, you can achieve little by way of your progress. You cannot build anything on foundation of caste. You cannot build a nation, anything which is essentially on caste, you know, the larger sentiment. Do you agree with this sentiment, Dr. Tharoor? And how relevant is it in the current situation?
Well, I think I absolutely agree with what he was saying, which is that you cannot discriminate against people, divide your society and expect to progress. He even, when he resigned from cabinet in 1951, he famously said that you're passing economic resolutions to empower the poor while you're leaving the social discriminations untouched. That is building a palace on a dung heap. It is one of his most famous utterances. But the truth is this, that the things have changed since then. That we're looking at, 70 years after Ambedkar uttered those words, and longer since the words you're quoting. And the fact is that Hindu society has reformed itself in many ways. I just gave the example of Dalit priests. I've told you of many other elements of progress. Urbanization has become a factor in our society. You can't, be discriminating. You have no idea of the caste of the person who's rubbing his shoulders with you on the bus. When you go to an office and your boss is from a nominally lower caste, you accept that is his position is hierarchically superior to yours. He gives you the orders and he takes a larger salary. Tough that you have a higher caste, it makes no difference. So all of these things, yes, caste is still persistent in social prohibitions like marriage, for example. Intercaste marriages are still relatively rare. And I think we should do more to publicize the government incentives that do exist to reward people who marry across caste boundaries. But that apart, there has been genuine reform and progress in Hindu society. And I believe Ambedkar would have found much to welcome. Now, I'm not suggesting that everything has changed for the better. I know that many Dalit friends tell me how terribly they have suffered and they still hear of sufferings. Even if individual people may have empowered themselves through education, professional opportunities, and so on, that a lot of people, particularly in village India and particularly in northern India, still suffer privations and discrimination. So I'm not saying the whole society is reformed, but I'm saying progress has been made and must continue to be made.
Dr. Tharoor, recently several changes were made to reservation quotas across the country. What do you feel about the EWS quota? And this is something Baba Saheb would have thought about.
I wouldn't want to teleport myself into his conscience on this one. It was not an issue that had come up there. He certainly wrote the sort of affirmative action provisions for SCs and STs very much to undo millennia of discrimination, which had core disabilities, including economic, but not only economic disabilities. Whereas the EWS reservation, which we all voted for, is pretty much unanimous in the House that I'm in, the Lok Sabha. I would say that it was a way of addressing the fact that there are people who belong to nominally upper castes, but who suffer terrible poverty and are in desperate ways. Just recently, I remember seeing on Twitter a photograph of an emaciated, thin rickshaw puller who was wearing the sacred thread in his shirtless body, and the photograph said, now tell us this man is one of the oppressors. What sense does it make? And I can see the point. There are people who are terribly suffering from economic disadvantages who don't suffer social disadvantages. How do you accommodate them? The short answer is not at the expense of Dalits and SCs and STs and OBCs, because they have their own quotas as a matter of entitlement, but by creating an additional quota that will help these economically poorer people also to overcome the disabilities of their poverty. I therefore think it's a laudable thing, and as you know, I am not one of those who have ever opposed it. I have been in favor of it. It passed in Parliament by an overwhelming majority. I think bar one or two who abstained or voted against it was unanimously supported. And I would say that now there is a court case. We'll see how the court rules. Its matter is before the Supreme Court. But to my mind, the intention is laudable because there are people who are very, very poor who also deserve the compassion of the state.
Dr. Tharoor, now I'm going to shift my focus now to questions of your political future and what next for you, because you have entered the contest for presidential elections of your party formally. What is making you contest? Because you, along with Manish Tiwari, Karti Chidambaram, have been demanding transparency in this entire election process. I've been following your tweets. You have been consistently raising questions about this entire election. Let me ask you a direct question. Why are you contesting?
Well, I think that though the party presidential election is an internal exercise, it also represents an opportunity to ignite widespread public interest in the Congress and to galvanize our party workers at the same time. So to my mind, we just can't continue with business as usual. We've been kind of stuck at the ceiling of 19% of the vote in two successive elections. We need to try something different, constitute a fresh appeal to the public, to those who drifted away from us in the last two elections, and bring them back to us. And to my mind, Shri Rahul Gandhi was right when he said that a democratic contest will only strengthen the party. And I do have some ideas to reform and re-energize the party. I'm planning to give a manifesto to my voters once I've submitted, I've just submitted the form, so I will be doing so shortly, in which I will recommend that we need to do certain things to re-energize the party after our recent setbacks. Decentralizing authority is a key part of it within the party. increasing consultative mechanisms at all levels, and giving our karyakartas more access to the leadership that affects their daily professional lives. So all of this is something we will absolutely have to do. And as far as why I'm contesting, if you believe strongly enough in something, you've got to be prepared to stick your neck out for it. And that's the approach that's guided me, frankly, in both personal and political life. So I think it's worth doing, and I certainly hope that this contest will benefit the party. Digvijay Singh came to see me on Thursday when he decided to contest as well. And we embraced each other as friends and brothers in the party, and we said that this is not going to be a battle between rivals, it's going to be a friendly contest between colleagues to capture the affections or the votes of our own colleagues, of our own party workers. That's what this is all about.
Okay, let me give you some statistics here. From 49.1% votes in 1984 Lok Sabha to just 19.7 in the last Lok Sabha elections. Now that you're contesting and you are saying that you will be presenting a manifesto of your ideas to the 9,100 voters who formed this electoral college, Dr. Tharoor, give me 4 reasons, 3 to 4 reasons that you think went wrong with your party. Where did your party go wrong?
Look, Mari, I've literally not had a chance to yet get the message out to my own voters. This is a manifesto directed at them. It's about what the voters, who are the workers of the party, want to see. So it would not be fair for me to go public before I've gone private, before I've gone to them, sent them something directly. I'm sure it'll eventually become public. These things do. But I've broadly given you a clue. It's about decentralizing and empowering our party workers at the lower levels, but it's much more detailed than that. I have about 10 points I'll be putting out. And I hope that in the process we will find a responsive echo from our party.
Tell me, what is Dr. Shashi Tharoor's roadmap for the revival of the Congress?
So, first of all, we have to strengthen our own party, and that includes massive work on the grassroots levels. One of the things I've been impressed by the party in my own state is the ethos of politics as social work between elections. So we're not just a party that comes to life every 5 years to fight elections. In between, our party workers are there with the people and helping them in all sorts of mundane ways. I mean, an old lady doesn't know how to fill in a ration card application or a EPL certificate form, a party worker helps. Somebody else's house is broken into by a gunda, but the local cops won't note the complaint because the gunda is connected to the ruling party. So the party worker goes and finds out, calls me as the MP who's not part of the ruling party and says, hey, will you talk to the commissioner or somebody high up and get them to come and investigate this. All these are things that have actually happened I'm talking about. That kind of thing where every time in between elections, the party is present in the daily lives of ordinary people. That kind of politics the Congress used to be very good at, and in many parts of the country we're not doing. I'd like to see more of that happening. I think certainly we need to turn then back to the people and mount a robust fight against the evident deficiencies of the BJP's economic governance, the rank unemployment, the issues that in fact we've been raising in Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra, of unemployment, of high inflation, of faltering economic growth. All of these things also need to be brought once again front and square. We can't just sit back and let the BJP have a free ride. And then as far as the other aspects are concerned, we've seen disastrous decisions by the government that have actually affected the daily lives of people. Demonetization was one example of it. But day after day, we're hearing great speeches and very poor implementation. We need to constantly point this out. We need to convert Parliament into a truly meaningful debating forum where we challenge the government on issue after issue using the parliamentary rules, not by disruption but by debate. And I think we should also take the government on in public, on the streets, when the issues so warrant, and we should do more of that as well. I think the Yatra has proven that there's tremendous appeal when the Congress party hits the ground walking.
Dr. Tharoor's spotlight is on the Yatra, and the face of this Yatra is Rahul Gandhi. Then anybody who becomes the Congress president, what role will he play? The reason why I'm asking this question is because for the longest time it is believed that Congress party cannot exist without Gandhis at the helm. How will you really break that image?
Well, I certainly hope that the Gandhis will remain inextricably attached to the party because I think our DNA as a party and theirs as a family is completely tied together. I hope the Gandhis will not be sort of expecting to disappear overnight. First of all, um, they've, you know, they may well have earned a rest, but it'll be foolish of the party to let go of the incredible advantages that they have brought to the Congress party. Their ethos as a family, as individuals, their undoubted political charisma, their appeal to the public, which is again on display during the Yatra. All of these things are assets for the party. And I think that they will continue, I hope, very much to be involved in the party, but very much in cooperation with the new president, whoever he or she may be. Secondly, I think that if they wanted to continue running the party, they wouldn't have held an election. And they would just have managed, if Rahul Gandhi had simply withdrawn his letter to the working committee, he'd have been president again anytime 2019 onwards. So I think it's very clear that they're genuinely anxious to step back. And so rather than implying that there's going to be some sort of remote control operating there, I think we should just hope that they will do more than they say they are going to do to be involved in a party that certainly needs their wonderful image to work with us.
And given the latest fiasco that happened in Rajasthan and Mr. Ashok Gehlot opting out of this the race for the Congress president, one view certainly is, what legitimacy and authority can Congress president really have when you cannot really decide the chief minister of a state? So that entire episode has actually raised several questions on this entire exercise.
No, first of all, I think the legitimacy comes from the process of election. There is no party in India which has had such an open and public election to elect its president. And if the Congress does that, it seems to me that the Congress is setting an example, throwing the sunlight of inner party democracy on our own work, that others should actually applaud and learn from. I think it'll be very healthy if all other parties follow our example. So on that one, the legitimacy of the president should not be doubted once that president has been elected. On the question of Ashok Gehlot, who's a dear friend and a respected senior colleague of our party, all I can say is that if you're contesting an election, you're prepared to take on whoever comes down the road. If it was Mr. Gehlot, if it's Mr. Digvijay Singh today, if it's somebody else tomorrow, we'll just have to face it. And I think that's fine, because this is not a battle between rivals. It's a very friendly contest between colleagues, and that spirit that we're entering all of this. And as far as I'm concerned, it's welcome that the Congress president, Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi, have all said to both Digvijay Sahab and me that the Nehru Gandhi family welcomes these elections. They'd like to see a diverse field of candidates contesting, and they're neither directly nor indirectly backing any one candidate. I think that's great. And we should go ahead in that spirit and see what comes out of the result.
And that brings me to my final and last question, Dr. Tharoor. How do you think a non-Hindi speaking president will fit in a role of a national party of a country where over 43% people speak Hindi?
देखिए, अगर हमारी राजनीति करने की ज़रूरत है तो आपको हिंदी बोलना ही पड़ेगा. तो नॉन हिंदी स्पीकर को बहुत बहुत बड़े कठिनाई होंगे. फिर भी हमारे देश, हमारी राजनीति में आपको पता है कि कभी-कभी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण नेता भी थे जो हिंदी पब्लिकली नहीं बोलते थे. आपको नाम पता है, मैं नाम नहीं इस्तेमाल करना चाहता हूं, लेकिन मैं उनमें से एक नहीं हूं. मैं तो हिंदी बोलता हूं और मैं तो हर रोज संसद से निकाल के साउंड बाइट देता हूं हिंदी चैनलों के. इसलिए मेरे ख्याल में आपके दर्शकों को अच्छी तरह पता है कि मैं हिंदी बोल सकता हूं.
All right, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, always a pleasure to speak to you. All the best for this contest and all the best for your book. That's all from me. Thanks so much for watching.